everyone. This is Gloria, the host of the Love in the Work You Do podcast. And of course, today I have with me Bunny Myah Wallace. And today we will be talking about grief as it relates to miscarriages. Bunny has that too, and she comes with a very, very robust experience with that. She also developed a system that she believes is helpful to people. And to top it all off, she also has a very vast experience with hospice. And this isn't just all that describes Bunny. She is also a yoga instructor. She does Reiki. She has a lot of things under her belt. So we're going to pull from all of that experience. And today we are going to learn about miscarriages as it affects us. And we will learn about how to cope through it as the grief that we all feel sometimes that comes through any loss that we have. Bunny, I'm so glad to have you here today.
Gloria, thank you so much for having me. And that was such a very beautiful introduction, and I'm so honored for that. So thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to share in any way that I might be able to help anyone who is going through miscarriage or recently experienced a miscarriage or potentially another grief inducing situation that they might be feeling sad or lost and searching for some hope. I was the class nerd. Like, I was voted the actual class klutz. I was not very in tune with my physical body, very awkward. I played music in the band and choir and all of those things, and very intellectual. And then when I had my second child, I entered sort of this spiritual awakening and the spiritual, side of things. And I did it through a practice called Myah, which is an integration of yoga, dance, and martial arts. And that took me on this journey of sort of growing into myself, basically. And it sort of weaves its way, that foundation weaves its way through everything I do. And especially, my first career is as a board certified music therapist, and I do have extensive training in that. And that is when I've done my hospice work as a music therapist, being with people through the dying process. So yeah, I do a lot. There's a lot. I think you did a great job summarizing it, though. Thank you.
I feel like I left out the music therapy part, but yeah.
We got it. We got it all now, I think.
Yes. So that's amazing. I was very curious to find out how you landed in the work that you do. So is this something that you always knew you wanted to be, a music therapist, a Reiki facilitator? That's what you...
I'm Reiki master now, so yeah.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
no, I actually never intended to do this. When I was in high school, planning to go to college, I was going to go into international business. And it's funny because I actually hope now that my business is expanding that I can travel and share this internationally. So it's kind of funny. I feel like it's kind of coming back around for me, hopefully, within the next few years. But no, I wanted to do business. And then someone told me about music therapy, and I had actually already applied to college. So I had to go and change all of my applications. And
Wow.
And then once I finally got my degree and I started in the workforce, there was no opportunities in hospice. So I was working with other patients and other populations. And I wound up volunteering for a hospice just to get the experience. But I
Hmm.
told them at that point, I was like, I am not going to do music therapy for free because that is what I got a degree in and I worked really hard for my credentials. I will be a typical volunteer and I will sit at the bedside with, whoever you need me to sit with.
Hmm.
So that training was absolutely amazing. It helped me so much. And the biggest lesson I learned from that experience was how to just sit and how to just
Hmm.
be. Um,
Okay.
and that sort of put me on this trajectory that I was hoping someday I could be a music therapist for hospice. It just took a long time for me to eventually get to it. And as
Okay.
far as, the yoga, like I said, when I started having children after my miscarriages, I eventually was able to have children. And after my second son, I was home full time and I just felt very like icky. Like I had lost track of myself and I didn't know like who I was anymore. I just felt like I had been home with these babies, like literally hanging off of me physically,
Hmm.
like sucking my prana through my breasts. And I just felt so like drained, from like having
Hmm.
these like beings. And I
Yeah.
mean, I think most moms experience that, especially if you're home full time, you don't get a break away at all.
Yeah.
And it had been 3 years that I had been home with no break. And I finally
Wow.
said, I really want to go back to Myah, dance, martial arts, and yoga. And so I found a place to start going once a week, and I was driving quite a ways. And I was like, there really should be somebody that teaches this close to me.
Mm.
There should be a class nearby me. And I was the class klutz. So I was like, I don't really know if I could do this. I was really scared to do the training. But I was like, you know what? What do I have to really lose? Like, it'll
Wow.
be a nice break away from my family. I'll give it a go and see if I can try teaching it. And that was 14 years ago. And I've been teaching, body practices, it went from Mia and then to, you know, um, Reiki and shamanism and yoga. And I've been teaching all of these things now for 14 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And
I
now
feel
it's like
like
I've added on paddleboard yoga and aerial yoga and like things that I never thought that I could do that I'm now
amazing.
teach. Like I didn't think I could even do it, like let alone teach it.
That's definitely inspiring because I feel like, there are those things that we all feel like we can't do, and then you push yourself a little bit and then you do it. So for me anyway, that's inspiring in spite of what it appears like we all have everything figured out. Sometimes, we're just all pushing through. Um, it also seems like the story is similar because me personally, even I was working 9 to 5, but I still felt, I think mine came after my divorce. Like then I just was like, oh wait, something's missing. Like I'm not all of me. Like, so how do I get me back? And then I went on that journey. So it's great, not glad that we all at least are in tune enough with ourself to pick up that thing when we feel like, oh wait, something is missing, and then you try to explore and go on a journey to find it out. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Love the
And I think
answer to
it's
that.
so easy for women, for us
Mhm.
to get lost
Oh
because
my,
we
right?
we sort of live to be the mom, right? I mean, for many of us who choose the role as
Yes.
mom, and we this role sort of overtakes everything as
Mhm.
it's a good thing that it does, right? And it still does. And so we are so prone to just losing the sense of who we were before we became mom. Who
Yeah.
am I outside of mom? Or in your case, wife? Like, who am I outside of wife? Like, it's like there's something in here that's not necessarily more, but it's equally valid and needing to express itself
Yes.
in another way.
Yes.
And it's like re-tapping into that place that needs to be expressed and needs to expand in some way, right? Yes, and I think
Yeah.
there's probably women listening right now who are in that place of like feeling that loss. It is a loss, right? You sort of go full in to this one role and lose all the other rules, you know?
Yes. And that just seems like another topic to discuss again, because like what happens? Why does that happen? And it's almost like we were never fully formed as in our youth, or maybe what do we? Yeah, it's youth, right? Youth is what happens after you transition out of being a teenager, and I feel like then you get yourself into all this becoming other people. You become what your spouse wants or your partner. You become what your children want when you have them. Or like I always also like to say, like you can be part of a community, a cause, or something, and then you also totally get lost in that, or even maybe a project, because sometimes I wonder for like the child actors, who start early, like, and then you see their struggle, um, and you just wonder for them. But at the same time, you see other people like Lisa Bonet and some other ones who were just themselves from the beginning. Like, and I know I'm totally off tangent now, but hopefully it's
No,
still.
but I really relate to that. It's so true. There are some that get so pulled in and they get so told like this is what you have to do, and
Yes.
they they're so controlled. And then you're right, there are some who really resist and they keep themselves out of, you know,
Yeah.
that. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes, so this is something that can be relatable to anyone, really, not just women. Like, people who might lose themselves in a job, right? And feel
Mhm.
like that's the only identity they have is their job. And then they've lost themselves in putting everything into their job, or, being in, a celebrity or whatever. Yes, 100%.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh, such good conversation. All right, so now we're going to get to the grief part. Um, and so I know in a prior conversation, I know that you had two miscarriages. I also know that now you do have, um, I'm gonna say you have kids up to 17 years of age. I've forgotten the the other ages.
I
You
have
have two
four
twins,
boys, four
four
boys.
boys, one twin,
Mhm.
and then so that would make two regular birth and then one twin birth. So what I'm curious about, I'm really curious. I want to know, a- and this might also be a trigger thing for anyone listening. If you've had a miscarriage in the past, or you just had one recently, so trigger warning. But I'm just curious. I haven't had a miscarriage, but in 2020, we've seen a lot of people come out. Um, the Duchess came out saying that she had a miscarriage. We know that Chrissy Teigen had a miscarriage. I don't know who else, but at least those were the two people this year that made miscarriage very visible to all of us and to show like the empathetic side. So, does it feel different? And I say that because I felt so everything is adversity in a way, right? It's something that comes to disrupt your normal. I know how being brokenhearted feels like. I know what death feels like. Um, I haven't had a miscarriage. How does it feel like the day before you find out, the day after you find out, and how do you deal with the days after?
Wow, that's a really good question. And when I give my answer, I know that I can only speak for myself and
Okay.
how it felt for me. And I have no idea what anyone else's experience is. I can only speak from my own place of what I experienced. And I had two miscarriages. The first miscarriage that I experienced, I was scared actually to be pregnant. I wasn't planning on having a kid at that time yet. And I had, we were just married and I wasn't quite ready to give up my career path and, go into the whole mom scene quite yet. And I, so I was kind of scared to be pregnant, and I was happy that we were having a baby, but like a little bit like, oh my God, I'm not ready for this. Like, how am I going to even handle this? And then when we found out that the baby was not alive, I had gone into the midwife for my appointment at 11 weeks, and she couldn't find the heartbeat with the little monitor. And she was like, oh, I'll just sneak you in and I'll put it on the ultrasound so we can see it. So she like brings me into the ultrasound room, she turns on the machine, and there was like a baby inside me that wasn't moving and there was no heartbeat. And she was like, it's not moving.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, I didn't know what it should be doing because it was my first pregnancy. So I'm like, what does that mean? She's like, it's not, she's like, I can't say because I'm not the ultrasonographer. She's like, so you're gonna have to come back. And I was like, okay. She's like, yeah, the heart's not beating and it's not moving, so that's not good. So for me, I went home that night and I was devastated. I mean, my cat, who had been like snuggling up to my belly, stopped snuggling up to my belly. She wouldn't come near it. And I just felt like, oh my God, there's a dead baby inside of me right now. And it was like shocking, I think was how I felt. And I was praying to God, like, God, please, like, I just want a miracle. Like, I don't know what this could be. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow when I have to go back. I'm just praying for a miracle. So I went back and the ultrasonographer couldn't find the baby anymore in there. So they said it had like whatever disappeared. I don't know. It was gone. So they, told me that I would have to have a procedure to have it removed. So thankfully I went back with someone that could drive me because I didn't know that it was going to be painful or like hurt as much as it did the procedure. It was kind of horrific. And when I came back home, I just was devastated, and I hadn't told very many people that I was even pregnant because we were waiting until 12 weeks and this was at 11 weeks. So hardly anyone knew. So there I was, like, bleeding, in pain, sad that the baby had died and was gone, and couldn't talk to hardly anyone because no one knew that I was even pregnant. For that miscarriage, I just kind of thought, well, maybe it's a fluke. People were like, oh, sometimes that just happens, whatever. And then when the second one happened, it was much more traumatic. And I wound up knowing that the funeral home, the local funeral home, could come and take the remains for me. And they came, they were so helpful. They took the remains. They called me when they got it. The funeral home said, we have the remains. Do you want to see it? And I said, yes. So I went to the funeral home. They allowed me to see the remains of the second miscarriage. They cremated it for me. And then I was able to sprinkle the ashes in my parents' backyard with my husband, my parents, my in-laws. And we sort of honored the lives of both babies. So we really did take the time to grieve the loss. And I don't think it really matters if someone believes that life starts at incarnation or where along the line they believe the life starts, because I think for many women, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
dare I say, most women, once you're pregnant, you start planning. Like, okay, well,
Yeah.
we need to do this, and we need to do this, and I need to do this, and how am I going to do this? And like, we kind of like to have things like figured out and planned out.
Yeah.
So whether you believe that the life started or not,
Mm-hmm.
you've still started creating a plan and a life for the baby that's inside of
Mm-hmm.
you, right? And
Yes.
then when somebody says, oh no, like that life is over now, that
Mm-hmm.
you just dreamed up in your mind. Now there's a hollow space, right? And the womb is hollow. Whether you believe that the
Mm-hmm.
heartbeat means there's a soul and it's an actual human or
Ah.
whatever, like there's a hollow space in the womb where that body was growing.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a real loss that I don't think our culture witnesses and
Mm-hmm.
recognizes, because they just consider it like a medical procedure and they make it very like medical and it's just a thing and it happens to people and move on, just try again. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just try again, move on, and it's like, okay, but this was like, there was a life that I was planning that now is not
Yeah.
happening. And now I have the
Yeah.
added like worry, like, what if I can't have a baby now? Because now at that point I was 26 and I felt like my body was falling apart. I'm like,
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
sick
That's pretty
all
scary.
the time. I've lost
Yeah.
2 babies. No one seems to know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I can't have children. No doctor seems to be able to explain it to me. So then I like start developing anxiety and not having any real answers or any real support. So
Hmm.
then developing this anxiety about like, well, maybe I can't have a kid. Maybe my body is broken forever. Like I can only imagine that there are other
Mm-hmm.
women who have
Mm-hmm.
experienced that or are experiencing that right now.
That was
Mhm.
beautiful that they could let you have the corpse and to go through the process with it to do the cremation and just honor the life of it, like you mentioned. Like, is it a life when it gets born, or was it already a life at inception? And I feel like that's again, I'm going to go back to my dad, because the reason why we're having this conversation is because of the grief I'm going through, and just to understand it from other perspective is to see, oh, in me, I'm like, oh, this is a lot, but then to now see other people grieving too. And my thoughts is there's not difference in my grief. Sometimes the world sees one grief as being more, maybe taking up more space and makes more sense. Whereas some other type of grief, like the grief that's associated with a miscarriage, that emotion, that grief isn't given the same space as it would a death of a child who turned one, right? Or maybe the death of a parent, like my dad dying at 76, or even other people dying, even this year. Lord help us, we've had so many deaths. So those deaths are more valid than in the eyes of other people than a miscarriage. But I feel like with this conversation, like, and maybe even before, I know like there's no difference, because there's no way, like, it's not going to leave you traumatized in a funny way, at least to so that you're able to go through the emotions. And that's what I mean when I said traumatized. Like, the emotion that comes with it, you have to go through all of that. You have to go through the grief. And if anyone is listening, maybe that has had a miscarriage in the past or is going through one, like, your grief, in a way, I feel like that's what Bonnie is saying too, like, your grief is valid. So how did you heal? I know you have a process that you call the renew body sequence. um, is that the process that you used to heal your womb after the 2 miscarriages, so that you could now that you have 4 beautiful boys?
So actually, the answer to that is actually no. because
Okay.
I wasn't even close to developing Renew Body Sequence after I
Ah,
had the two miscarriages.
okay.
Um, when I After I had the two miscarriages, I was very sick, like many symptoms. I had GI issues. I was falling asleep when I was driving. I had a
Oh,
horrible rash that was like, it would wake me up in the night, so itchy. I couldn't sleep. I had gone to doctors, gallons and gallons of blood. No one could tell me. And then it turned out that I have gluten intolerance. And I don't
oh,
know that
okay.
a lot of people realize that gluten intolerance can be linked to fertility issues, but
Wow.
it is an autoimmune disease. And so my body was in this autoimmune response and like attacking itself. So
Mm,
it couldn't hold, I think it couldn't hold the pregnancy. So I had gone on a gluten free diet. And then I also was put on progesterone. So those two things helped me.
oh, wow.
And I know that other people have had other things help them, but I did do a healing exchange with a woman who had a miscarriage, and she was, feeling like she wasn't going to be able to have children. And I was like, well, are you eating gluten, and are you eating not, organic, or are you eating a lot of like toxic things? And she was like, no, I'm doing all clean eating.
Oh,
And I
wow.
was
Okay.
like, I think I said to her, because I did a numerology reading for her. I also do numerology readings. I said, I really think you're going to have a child. Like, I really believe it. And she did. She wound up having twins. So I think
Whoa.
if we're keeping the body clean, right? Like, so organic foods, gluten-free foods, so not eating these like toxic chemicals and
Mm-hmm.
things that create this. Even people who aren't gluten intolerant,
Mm-hmm.
gluten causes a lot of the body to become inflamed. It's an inflammatory food. So it's really not the best anyway. Like it really shouldn't be eaten to the extent that we do eat it. Yeah, so that was how I healed that.
Okay.
But that was only in my physical body, right? It didn't heal my emotional body.
Mm,
It didn't heal my mental body. It didn't heal my soul.
mm-hmm.
I was able to physically have children. And then the trauma of those events continued to linger in my emotional body, in my mental state, and I didn't know it until I had an awakening at the age of 33, where I opened up as a channel, and that's when I downloaded this Renew Body Sequence. And as it came into me, when it was being downloaded, I literally was simultaneously reliving every traumatic event that I had had up until that point, up until the age of
Mm,
33, which, I mean, I almost died at the age of 5. I almost died at the age of 13. I had these miscarriages. When my first son was born, I almost died in the recovery room. So
hmm.
all at once, I was like reliving all of these experiences and downloading this healing practice to move it through the physical body. And once I started using this Renew Body Sequence, is what I'm calling it, um, it helped my body to
Mm-hmm.
reintegrate in all facets. The
Okay.
physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, my soul, like everything kind of has come into full integration. And that was back in 2009. So I've been doing this now for 11 years.
Hmm.
And I've been sharing it in classes and with other people. And I've seen what a dramatic effect it can
Mm-hmm.
have for other people in healing their trauma.
The saying that you love, right? The By the age of 36, there are people who've known grief and known its impact. No, and know it and its impact. That seems to be all yours because, like, I
Yeah.
think. right? But
Do you mind if I rephrase it?
yes, rephrase it because I
Okay,
think I wrote it down wrong.
that's okay. By the age of 36, there's two types of people. So there's people who've been through trauma or grief and
Mhm.
know it, and there's people who've been through trauma or grief and don't know it. So
Hmm.
there's the people who are aware and like you are on a healing journey
Mm.
because they are aware of the impact that it's had on them.
Mhm.
And then there are the people who try to just stuff it and pretend that everything's fine and just go on as if it didn't affect them.
Mm.
And those two paths lead to very different outcomes.
Can you share the outcomes? Like I feel like I'm really grieving my dad. I'm not gonna lie. Like dad's girl, like it wasn't even like I was the only girl. Like my dad had five girls, but
Did he
like
tell you that you were his favorite?
he didn't, but you just knew you were his favorite. Like if he was talking to you, like it was just like totally devoted to you and would give the shirt off his back. Of course, he was also a dad and did behaved in dad ways, but he was just all fully present. And if he couldn't be present, he wasn't with you. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was always there. And I guess at the end of the day, in life, you think you're doing what you're supposed to do with your parents, right? The older they get, you hang out with them, you do this, you do that. But I didn't know, like, we're also like this bond that comes from being a daughter, sitting at the foot of your father, that you were also building, that soul connection, which he had when he was born. And now me being born, I'm connected to him. I totally didn't see that coming. So that has made it's made it really, really um hard. But the great thing is we went ahead and he's buried. He died October 28th. And the burial was like a month later. So we've moved past that. I feel like that put a closure, literally,
Mhm.
on things to move forward. But that grief is still there. Like I'll be okay and I'll be like, wait, why? Why did he have to die now?
I want to share a funny story. I'll never forget this hospice family I had. And it was a mom that was dying. Okay. And she had like
Mm.
5 kids. And they're all like sitting around the bedside. And they're like, no, I was her favorite. No, I was her favorite. No, I was her favorite. No, she told me I was her favorite. And they're like sitting there while this person is dying.
Oh my
And like
god.
he had effectively told every single one of them that they were the favorite and they all believed it. And like they're sitting there like while she's like, and it was literally the funniest thing.
Oh
In my
my
mind, I
god.
like to think it's like what a smart mom.
I
She won.
know.
They all thought that they were the favorite.
That's the second time I'll hear that. I know someone else who said that. I think it's it's my pastor, I think. As she said her dad made kn- everyone was their dad's favorite. So
Yes,
that, that's really good.
I know my kids keep trying to ask me who's the favorite, and I keep telling them you're all my favorite and you're all my least favorite
I know,
because
right?
you all like when you were doing the thing that you know you shouldn't be doing and you do it anyways, like you are then my least favorite.
His favorite. Oh Lord, I love that.
When you are
I am going to.
the right things, you are all my favorite.
I am going to steal that. I'm going to steal that. So did that so the two groups, the group I fall in, you feel like there's hope for us in the future because we're
Wait, yeah,
processing.
you want me to predict the future? I don't know. Like I think that the people who don't know it are
Mhm.
most likely to develop some type of chronic. issue,
Mm-hmm.
some type of chronic illness. And it'll be like a mystery illness and no one's going to know what caused it and where it came from. And,
Mm.
oh, why is this? Well, if you have unhealed grief in your system and you're like doing nothing to like process that, like your whole body is like that emotional imbalance is gonna throw your whole system off. I mean, this is like the tenet of like
Mm.
Eastern medicine, right? So, I mean, I think it would be to that person's advantage to take inventory of where they might, if you're over the age of 36 and you're going, oh, I don't have any grief. Well, I think you're lying to yourself, to be quite honest.
Hmm.
But
Mhm.
I think there's probably something there that potentially you could be in denial of. And
Yeah.
in that denial, you could be creating a chronic health situation for yourself that you don't even know, and that Western medicine will not be able to touch because they don't get that, you know what I mean, at all. And there's no like trajectory for that other than, you know, they give you a pill and mask the
Mm-hmm.
symptoms, and then you might get better, and then something else will come up, and you might get better from that, and something else will come up. So it's like, unless you deal with the trauma and the grief in a way that's going
Mm-hmm.
to really heal it from the inside in all aspects, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, unless you like really work to heal in all four of those areas,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's not, it's going to show up in ways that you don't want it to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and again, like, I'm not a medical doctor. I can't give medical advice.
Mm-hmm.
I am speaking from a place of spiritual experience and experience with, you know, what I've experienced in my body and seen and witnessed. I'm a witness, not a medical doctor. Um, but as far as the people who, like you, are
Mm-hmm.
aware and in tune and seeking answers, you know, I think for you, there's this event, right? The loss
Mm-hmm.
of dad. That event could potentially be the biggest gift you've ever been
Mm.
given.
Mm. Hmm.
Because once you go down the spiritual path of seeking, you then open yourself up to the gift.
Yes. Yes. And that's what I'm doing. Like, it's a good thing. Like, I remember saying at the sometime in the middle of the death, no, it was after his burial. My word was everything that God does is good. You know, I think in Genesis, after he created the world, there was that that word that he said, which was that everything God made was good. And so to me, even though it hurt, it's like, okay, that's my dad. God wouldn't have taken him if there wasn't a purpose behind it. And so all I'm doing is like, okay, now I'm just expectant of the good that will come out of it. And on one of the people I know had also said personally, like, oh, just think about it as now you have two fathers in heaven. And I thought that was really profound.
Love that. One quote came to my mind. I believe it's Rumi, but I'm not sure. But it's no lotus, no mud, no mud, no lotus, no mud, no lotus. And
Oh.
it's because the lotus flower blooms out of like the muddy water. And it's like,
Mm.
you know, just like with a diamond that comes from, you know, is formed from being like, you know, agitated, right? Or like a
Yes.
pearl that forms, it's like a grain of sand in the shell that becomes agitated and aggravated. And over time, its agitation and aggravation slowly creates the coating that becomes the pearl, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, in order to have the pearl, it needed the agitation. In order to grow the lotus, we need the mud. So in order for us to really attain whatever it is our soul is seeking to expand into, we need to experience, part of our human experience is grief and trauma. There's no way around it. People around us are going to pass. We can't escape that. And so then how do we create the lotus? Like, how do we create an environment that will grow the lotus out of the mud? Because you can have mud with no lotus. You can't have lotus without mud.
You know, one thing that came to my mind was a soccer ball that for some reason has something inside of it, right? And that's what that person will be carrying around. It's like there's some extra thing that, you know, you're supposed to kick a ball and it should go without making any noise or without having anything inside of it, but yet it has that. So that popped into my head. Then I was also,
you can't kick
right?
the ball effortlessly, because it's going to have a sound like a heavy weight that'll slow it.
Yes.
Because you're kind of weighed down with this thing that hasn't been able to sort of live through you. It's like, I feel like grief, I mean, for me and my experience with it, is that I had to let it live through me. I had to let it be in me.
Yeah.
And part of when I had my awakening at 33, part of what spurred that awakening actually was the training that I was in had this thing where you move through 5 stages. And she had 5 stages, which was embryonic, creeping, crawling, standing, and walking. Ended with walking. So like you would move through these in your body, and it was like this self-healing practice. And I would go, and then I would be dancing and like really expressive. And then we would come down on the floor afterwards, right, to like cool down or whatever. And I would literally fall on the ground in a puddle of tears and just feel this sense of like sobbing and like just grieving and not even knowing why or where it was coming from. And then I would sit up afterwards to like end and namaste. And I would feel like literally as I walked out the door, I felt as though I was being reborn. And I had this like really profound spiritual experience that I was like, this is what Jesus is speaking of in his quote about being reborn. Like I've been into born again Christian churches and like stood up at the altar and like understand that concept of born again. But I felt like there was a layer of me shedding, completely different from the person I walked in the door 90 minutes previously. Like I was not even the same. And I literally I was reborn. And I was like, how can I take her 5 stages and add this element that it's missing after walking, which is dying? Because we all die, and allowing that experience of the death and then allowing the moment to be reborn and start again. And what comes in between, because part of Renew Body Sequence also incorporates what comes in between. So I have 13 phases and they are set like a clock, right? So it's 1 through 12, and then in the center is 0.
Okay.
So that's the 13th is actually 0. And 0 is like the center of everything. It's the still point. It's the oneness. It's holding everything as it is, right? And then the 1 through 12 is what yogis refer to as like the samskara. It's like this wheel of birth, death, rebirth, and it's divided into these 12 seasons. So like 1 through 3 represents the spring, and then 4, 5, 6 represents the summer, and then 7, 8, 9 is the fall, and then 10, 11, 12 is the winter. So it's like what happens in that winter time, we often jump over. We want to go from death to new life. We want to just get ourselves like back on track. So death happens, we forget to grieve, we forget to honor
Yeah.
that space in between.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Jewish culture does actually a better job of most other cultures because they will like sit Shiva, I believe they call it, and they'll like really hold space for a longer time than other cultures will to like really honor this.
Process. We need to do a great job. And I think it's funny because even before my dad died, I'd gotten into what's his name? Um Willard is his name. He wrote the book. He didn't write the book, but he practiced soul keeping. And so that was in the months and months before my dad's death. I was always into that. Like, and what soul keeping does is it's that space between when things were perfect and things are not perfect. And what do you do to keep yourself going? Is to just be and sit in that place. And Dallas Willard is his name, and the book is was written by John Ortberg, called Soul Keeping. And I've read the book twice. I'm probably going to read it again in 2021 because I just love it. It gives you permission to grieve and to understand what grieving is. It's like anything, death, loss, you just feel like you don't want to be committed somewhere else again and you want to pull yourself out. Like, yes, you can do that. You feel tired, you feel burnt out. There's space for that. And sometimes, like you said, like the world we live in just tells you to move on. But I feel like we can move on gradually, like figure out a system that works for you and then slowly, integrate back in. I know for a fact that some of the things that I used to do before my dad passed, like I can't do it at 100% capacity. But I also know it takes 30 days to break a habit, right? And 30 days to form a habit. So it's like, wait, if it takes 30 days to break it, 30 days to form it, like I can break it in this 30 days. So it's like a juggle between, all right, this day I'm not capable of doing everything, but I'll do a little bit of the things I can do, but then I'll still grieve. you know I'll do what I can do of those things I used to achieve before, but then I'll still find time to do a little grieving, but not to dismiss um what I used to do before, my routines, and not to dismiss the grieving either. So hopefully I'm doing it.
And I
Definitely.
want to say, I don't know that there's any right way to grieve. I mean, I
Mm,
think each person is going
that's
to
a
be
good point.
called in their own way, right? So I think the the challenge comes when people might feel a tug or pull, that they might need more work to grieve. And
Mm.
rather than following that tug or that pull, they just close it off and I'm
Ah,
just going to buckle up and, man up or, move on or whatever. These kind of cultural concepts
yeah,
of like, just
yeah,
move on,
yeah.
just get over it. Like, and I think that's really toxic, honestly.
Mhm,
And I
I
do
agree.
think that those kind of statements like, oh, just move on, just get over it, like whatever, those things are what lead to
Hmm.
illness.
And I believe, like, when you say the work, I know someone who said, like, sometimes, like, even in prayer, um and like that was the work they had to go get done to help them heal. Like they had to ask like people to form a prayer circle around them so that they could um do it not in their own power, but like in the strength of others too. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into it. Okay, one other thing. So while you were talking about that, and um, still on the people who know and the people who don't know,
Mhm.
um, there's a resource. So for anyone listening, there's a resource that I'm aware of. You may remember when I say it's the ACE score. There's a sheet made by the one of the associations. I can't remember, but I'll link it in the blog write up. But it's an ACE score where if you go through it, you'll be able to determine if you actually have any trauma from the past. An ACE score is a tally of different types of abuse, neglect, and other hallmark of rough childhood. According to the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, the rougher your childhood, the higher your score is likely to be, and the
Wow.
higher and like you said, and the higher your risk for later health problems. Look at that.
Oh, so even it's like documented and proved that this actually
Hmm.
causes health problems.
Hmm.
Oh,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
I didn't even need to be a doctor.
You no, you didn't. Because some things are really intuitive. It's like you get the wisdom, right?
Yes.
Downloaded directly into you. And so when someone is dying, some people know they're gonna die. Well, like people maybe that have cancer and they've been told this is how many days you have left, or even in times of that we're in now, in COVID, where maybe someone has been admitted and they've been told they have so many days to live, right? How do you, and I know you mean you're not a medical doctor, but from your hospice experience, how do you hold space for them and you at the same time so that you know that at least you're doing a little bit of something right? I don't know if it's ever gonna be all right, but you just have such short time. How do I hold space for you? Like, be it like a year, be it like you have one day, and myself at the same time.
So this is a great question, and there's a couple of layers to the answer. So I'm going to just kind of rewind and explain a little bit about hospice because
Okay.
not everyone understands hospice, and hospice can be a scary word for some people.
Oh yeah.
So hospice was started to provide people with a peaceful passing with as few medical interventions as necessary. So basically, the goal of hospice is to remove unnecessary medical interventions and to only provide comfort. So it's comfort measures only. And that comfort is physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So, hospice is actually a federally funded program through Medicare,
Oh
and
wow.
it's free. So, if you have a diagnosis from two medical providers that says you have 6 months or less to live,
Hmm.
you are entitled to hospice services, and it comes from Medicare for free. So some people don't understand that when they choose hospice, this is a free service. This is federally funded. You don't have to pay extra for it. And what's going to happen is the person who's dying is electing to give up interventions that are making life more miserable for them, right? Because a lot of times, the medical model, there are some, especially with like cancer and stuff,
Yeah.
some treatments can become just like a lot, like
Yeah.
dialysis, for instance, it become a lot. And then at that point, it's like a person's just like, you know what, I don't want to live this quality of life. I don't want this quality of life anymore. Like I just want to live in comfort, in
Hmm.
peace. If they're in a medical facility, maybe they want to go home to just be at home with their family. What happens is hospice comes in and it's mandated nursing, personal care,
Hmm.
spiritual support,
Ah.
social work. So there's a chaplain for every hospice, social work. So there's, psychological, emotional support. And not only do you have the hospice services through the dying process, but then it's extended for
Hmm.
bereavement you get bereavement support for 13 months.
Oh, wow.
And it's all free. So people don't understand, like, this is, I think, one of the best uses of our federal funds available. I think it's one of the best things that our government tax dollars do. And I don't know that people realize that.
I didn't.
Right. Most people don't know this. So part of the history of hospice, when somebody has that 6 months or less to live, people in hospice services like me, we can go and provide care. And there's so many layers to the care, but for the most part, people working in hospice are just compassionate people that want to help, right? And part of what we do is to just sit and be present and hold space and gently provide support and encouragement and explain the dying process so that people who've never watched someone die before know what to expect, so they know what's going to happen next, so it's less traumatic. As a board certified music therapist, what I would do is to find out about the patient's musical preferences and music that's important to them. And I would sit next to them and I would sing these songs, which a lot of times would elicit a response more so than they were capable in any other setting. Like, they would be losing the ability to talk and move, but I would sing, they would open their eyes, they would move their hands, they would even sing with me when they weren't talking. Like, all of these amazing things would happen. Now, this is, very different than what's happening with COVID patients. And I don't know that people are aware of this, but I, as a hospice music therapist, would go into many different nursing homes. I did not wear a mask because it wasn't required, but imagine singing with like a mask and a shield and like full coatings of gear and like trying to play a guitar and sing with all that. It's not
possible.
Really, you're not connecting. So what's happening now is even patients who are on hospice and have 6 months or less to live with a different diagnosis other than COVID are not allowed services. I have been kicked out of facilities since March. I can't go in. So what is happening now is very different. Anyone in a facility who's on hospice is getting 1/10 of the services that they were getting. The nurses can only go in like the last couple days right before the person dies. No family can go in, or very minimal family, only right at the time of death. They'll call and say the person's transitioning, come now. So they're missing the 6 months building up to the death to like process the grief because they can't go in. So what's happening with COVID, I personally, on a personal level, think is a tragedy, because I feel that people who are already going to die anyways are being denied their human rights to a peaceful, supported death because of these COVID rules. Now, I understand why they're making the rules. However, I don't know that the way that they're doing it is effective. And my solution that I would prefer to see is them having separate units so that there's people who, want to live out the rest of their days and don't mind the risk of getting COVID, have signed a waiver that they've lived enough of their life and they don't want to wear a mask. They don't want, to miss seeing out their family, all of these things. They understand the risks. They understand, and have a unit for those people. And then the other ones that, want to, try to prolong their life for as long as they can to have. But right now, so to answer your question is a little bit of a trigger for me because
you're passionate about it.
I do really feel sad for what's happening right now, not just for COVID patients, because they're dying alone without their family And I don't believe that's the fault of anyone who,
Hmm.
just lived their life. That is the way the medical system is handling this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they could create a unit for people who are assuming risk, but they are
Mm.
choosing not to do that.
But you know what you just said has also given me a better appreciation of all the once in a month viral video I see that people are throwing for the older people in either the hospice or just the adult living community. That just gives me a better perspective why that makes so much sense. Because I just thought about that now. I'm like, oh, they don't get to see their family.
They're not seeing their families. They're not seeing service providers.
Oh.
They can't even go in the nursing facilities. I mean, I live in Massachusetts where we have some of the strictest regulations in the country right now. So
Mhm.
I can't speak to other states, but in our state right now, our residents in these facilities can't leave their rooms to go to the dining hall and eat together.
Mm. Oh, wow.
They're
Wow.
isolated in their room with zero contact.
Wow.
They don't even see each other.
Hmm. That's a lot. We should do a lot of Zoom things for them.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, the facilities are doing some FaceTime and Zoom things.
Hmm.
But I still think that people at that age, to be honest with you, they don't really get this. Like I've done Zoom music therapy or
Hmm.
FaceTime music therapy with them. They can't, I just see the hopelessness in their eyes and they can't
Hmm.
connect through this medium. It's not, they don't even, they look at it and they're like,
Oh.
like,
Thank God, at least this month, or should we say this week, the Moderna and the what's the other one called?
the Pfizer
The
vaccine.
Pfizer vaccines are there, even though I know we're all still skeptical about getting the vaccines, but it's good to know that we're getting closer to whew, this deadly pandemic being resolved. So that's something. As we wrap up, I feel like we could go on and on. Who knew grief was fun? You
I
know,
know, right?
who knew
We're
grief was
making grief great.
I know, like this is really I'm enjoying it. So as we wrap up, let me I don't just one thing, like what's one beautiful thing that even though like it's grief, it's it's death, it's miscarriage, it's our emotions, and we may have mentioned this already, but if there's like one or two things that we could learn from it, maybe.
I think that makes sense though, but I do think that
Okay.
if if we allow it to take us
Mhm.
on a journey, if we let it live in us and live
Mm.
through us, we let it vibrate within our frequency and then shift. If we allow this and
The
allow
grief.
ourselves to be on the path,
Mm.
it
Okay.
it will eventually transform to our greatest teacher, our greatest ally, our greatest gift.
Mm.
Because I mean, especially when you had someone who you're grieving that you loved, like your dad,
Mhm.
you truly can, look back
Mhm.
at that love as, that old saying, it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all.
Yes.
Just to
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
just to feel alive with that love. And even if
Ah, I
you
see
had
it.
that small, tiny baby for a short period of time
Yeah.
and you felt a presence of love within you,
Mhm.
just to
Mhm.
know that that love was in you and it was created from love, maybe, or even if the person who impregnated you, you might not be loving them anymore or never did love them. There's still a sense that this pregnancy came through love somehow, that there was a source of love that put it there, right?
That it was part of the journey, that it was part of your experience. Yes,
And to
yes.
help you claim that love for yourself, right? So to really experience that deeper sense of love. I feel like
Hmm.
I know we're at the end, but I feel like this is a pearl that I really want to share. I recently had a conversation with a friend, and I was talking to her about this feeling of love, this like pervasive feeling of love. And I don't know if it's a universal feeling or if only some people feel it, but it's like when you really feel connected to the source of love and like really
Hmm.
just really like magnetically feeling love in every cell of your body. Sometimes when I experience that, at the same time, I experience grief. It's like I
Mm.
feel this overwhelming state of love and grief at the same
At the same
time.
time.
And
Oh,
it's like the grief almost allows the love and the love almost allows the grief. And it's like, I can't explain it, but it's just
oh.
the feeling of being alive, like
Mm.
to be a human being and to be able to experience all of it. Because in a human body, that's what we do is we process
Hmm.
all of it, right?
Hmm.
I mean, if
Hmm.
you believe that we transition, once we transition, we're just in that state of pure love, right?
Hmm.
Without any of these other human emotions.
Yes, the body is gone,
Yeah,
and our spirit is what makes that's beautiful. I love that. Like to hold the same space for grief and love or joy. That's that should be our goal as we continue on the journey. So thank you so much, Bunny. Now we're gonna turn the tables on you for a minute and be like, what share your handles, because I know we in this age are on various platforms.
yeah. I am Bonnie Myah Wallace everywhere. So it's Bonnie Myah Wallace on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok.
Oh, you're on TikTok. Oh,
It's on LinkedIn, all the things. It's Bonnie Myah Wallace. I also have the domain name bonniemayahwallace.com. So yeah.
and what can you help people? What problem can you help people solve?
Well, if people are at that point of realizing that they have some stuff that they want to work through, I can do Reiki, and I can also do virtual renew body sequence sessions where I basically help people move through the 13 phases in their body. And I will kind of customize a specific like set of yoga poses that correspond to all 13 that they can
Okay.
then take home and practice on their own. And I help people to create their own playlist on Spotify or iTunes or whatever their thing is, so that they can then play that playlist while they do their renew body sequence.
Amazing, amazing. Okay. Do you have any upcoming events or just the regular ones? If you have one coming
I
up,
teach
you,
virtual classes almost daily. So
okay.
when you go to bonniemayahwallace.com, there's a link to my yoga studio there, and you can register for any virtual classes. I literally teach uh, 6 days a week. So
Okay, awesome. Okay, so that's you all heard it. You want to do yoga, she is your girl. And let's even say you have someone who is in hospice. Bonnie might actually be able to do a Zoom with that
absolutely.
family
Somebody wants
member.
to Zoom me for a music therapy session. I would love that if they have access to the individual and a iPad.
All right. And I think on this note, we are going to end the podcast. It's been great having you here. I feel like we could go on and and on forever. Like I said earlier, who knew that grief was? it was this much fun. But again, thank you. I appreciate you coming here. And again, look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
Maria. Bye.